Hello friends, welcome to the techwithsoft. So the today video which I'm recording, that is for Spring Boot with unit testing. Okay, so that is a fresh series for the Spring Boot candidate who want to learn from the scratch Spring Boot. But yeah, some prerequisite is required for that. Okay, what it should be, you should know the Java first, right? You should know, right? You should know Spring Boot, Spring Core, not boot, Spring Core at least, and you have an understanding of the server. Then only you can watch this video, otherwise you will not understand what I'm going to explain here. And one more thing I want to tell you guys, I'm recording these videos in many topics from core to advanced. So I will request to you, like if you got some notification, so please do not watch that recording directly. Okay, I will request you can go to the YouTube and search here like techwithsoft, and I actually divided these videos in the series. Okay, so when you will go to this site, right, I will give this and URL as well with this description, and you can go to the playlist. So in the playlist you can see that I made it this in different categories like MongoDB series, MySQL series, Core Java series, Java 8 series, Agile series. Same I will make like a Spring Boot series as well, right? So please do not watch randomly. I will request to all of you, if you are want to learn more, right, clearly, please go with the series by series. So according to your understanding, if you are learning core Java, please go with the core Java. If you're learning Java 8 features, go with the Java 8, right? If you're learning some interview questions, go with the interview questions, like that way, right? Do not watch from anywhere something like that, otherwise things will not be clear. Clear it now. So now let's come to the part. Let's to begin it. So first what we have to do, we have to create one projects, right? So that's a prerequisite for that, right? If you want to watch this recording, you should have understanding of the core Java, right? You should have understanding of the Spring Core, and you should know the Tomcat server, because these are the three things is going to use here, right? As well as MySQL also, MySQL or Hibernate or JPA. Hibernate JPA also will required here, Hibernate and JPA. Okay, so if you know Hibernate and JPA, that will also fine for that, right? Because we are going to use that. Now let's begin. So whenever you want to start Spring Boot, right, we should know some advantage of Spring Boot, why we are going to work with the Spring Boot. So first thing is that one advantage of Spring Boot is that Spring Boot have its own inbuilt server. Spring Boot have inbuilt server. What is the name of that server? That is a Tomcat server. Okay, it is having our inbuilt server called Tomcat server, right, which run on a one port called 8080. So that is the one advantage of Spring Boot. And second thing is that Spring Boot have its own, Spring Boot have one annotation. That annotation name is called at Spring Boot application, right, which does give a lot of benefit actually. It is a combination of three annotation, right? So Spring Boot have this annotation Spring Boot, right, which is called add Spring Boot application. Let me type this in way, add Spring Boot application. This annotation does play a role of many things. If you know the core Spring, right, that time you can see that we have three annotation. So Spring Boot application, it is a combination of three annotation. What are these annotation? I am going to tell you that. First one is called component scan. Okay. Second one is called enable auto configuration. So first advantage is Spring Boot have its own inbuilt server, right, Tomcat 8080. Spring Boot have its own like at Spring Boot application annotation, which is a combination of component scan, enable auto configuration, and configuration. If you have this understanding, right, like this component scan that we do, if you are using a Spring Core, right, that means that is used for enable that base package, right? Enable auto configuration if you want to do auto configuration and configuration. So that is also one of the advantage of Spring Boot. They are having a like inbuilt kind of configuration. We don't have to worry about it, right, because it is a combination of this three things. And one more thing, that Spring Boot have a one more inbuilt database called S2 database. S2 database is also one kind of advantage here, right? So S2 database is also part of Spring Boot, which is not there in Spring core, something like that. So these are the some advantage, okay, of Spring Boot. Because of that we do pick it. First, Spring Boot application is a combination of 3 annotation. Remember that is also one of the interview questions, and it is having inbuilt database, S2 database, and it is having its own Tomcat server called Tomcat, which is run in 8080. If you want to run with the Spring Core, right, then I have to download this Tomcat server explicitly, and we have to configure it in our application. But here we do not do that, right? Next, we are going to understand like how to be create the Spring Boot application. Because if you want to start with the Spring Boot, right, you should know how to create the application. The Spring Boot application, we have many way to create it, right? But we do follow that Spring Boot initializer, right? So here I will pick that Spring Boot initializer. So you have to come to this site, and here we have to pick, right, start.spring.io. With the help of that only you can create the Spring Boot application. And here you have to pick what you want. So we have a two type of projects, kind of that normally which to be pick, either Maven or Gradle, Kotlin and Gradle Ruby. So here I'm picking Maven only because normally we do use with Maven. Even we can go with the Gradle as well, no problem with that. Okay, what are the language we are going to pick? Java only, right? What are the project metadata? That could be a package name here, and artifact will be the application name. That means application name, suppose I am going to create Spring Boot with testing, something like that. Spring Boot with testing, right? So in Spring Boot with testing, if you will give right artifact ID, that means that could be project name, and the project name, whatever the package will create, that comes under the com.example. So com.example will be the package inside it only, right? Then we have to add some dependency. So many some of the common dependency, like we have to add web dependency, right? And we have to add Lombok dependency. Lombok, I will tell you what is the use of it. And we can add JPA dependency because we'll perform some database operation. And we'll add one SQL dependency as well, right? MySQL dependency, MySQL, right? And then we can add one more dependency, DevTool dependency, which is loading that application, right? When do we do any changes? So these are the dependency we have to add it, and we have to click on the generate, then project will create, right? After that, if you'll click on generate, right, that time your project will be download in your download section. After that, what you have to do, you have to open your IntelliJ IDEA, right? And you have to open click on the open projects, and with the open projects, right, what you have to do, you have to pick your location wherever it is, right? For me it is in download folder. So and then after selecting that, you have to click on the select folder, right? So after that only what happen, right, like for example I have this project, right? Inside that I will go and I will directly select that time what happen, right? This project will be in your IntelliJ IDEA. So that way we can import the project in our IntelliJ IDEA. So right now what do we get here, right? So please understand the structure carefully. As I told before that, I explained that before that as well in core, but here also that you have to understand. So whenever we do import the projects, right, that time we will get this man and test. These are the two packages. Here only we do deal with that, right? And pom.xml is something where we have to add the dependencies, right? So man, we have like Java and resources. So in the Java we will write the source code completely, and resources we will write the if any configuration we have, right? So that we will keep under this application of properties file, right? I will tell you what the configuration we do provide in the application of properties file, right? So first we are coming to the Java, and here we are writing Spring Boot with application. So that is a core application here. So where we have like only simple class, and we have like main method, nothing other than that, right? But we have to make a complete application, right? So then we are starting that application, what to we write and what could be the process for it, right? So one thing that you have to remember, that if you are want to design with the Spring Boot application, right, you have to go with some packages first, because Spring Boot we have to divide in a different packages. We do not keep in the same package. So what could be the step for creating the packages, right? So first package that do we create called model package, right? Or entity package, something like that. Okay, second package we do create, that could be a do package, that is for repository. Third package we will create, that could be service. And fourth package that do we create, which is called controller. So that could be different packages that do we create. First we have to go with the entity, do, service and controller, right? What do we keep under the entity? Entity will be directly like kind of Pojo class, okay, which will having a getter and setter, right? Which will have getter and setter. Okay. And do will having a what? Do will having a database logic. Database logic. Service, what it will have? Service will have a kind of business logic. Control will have a kind of logic which will directly connect with the controller. I mean front end, right? So control, that means it will connect directly with client. It will connect with client, right, using endpoint. So entity class we do create having a Pojo class, something like that, add getter setters. Do will having a database logics, service will having a business logics, control will having a which will directly connect with the controller like with the clients using the endpoints. And if it is required, we may create some mapping package as well if we do some kind of mapping, right? And next we do create some utility package as well. So that depend on the scenarios, we may have a n number of packages, but these first four are the mandatory that we have to keep always. And these two, if it is required, we do keep it. I mean, that is also mandatory. I mean, sometime in projects mapping is also required. Utility is also required. Utility means the code which we are going to use in multiple places. So that things I will keep in utility. Like for example, I created multiple service classes, right? And some of the code which I want to use in all the service classes, that I will keep under the utility, right? Mapping is what? Mapping is something where we are converting, right? Like we are taking request from the client and we are converting to the some other things. That time we are doing mapping. So we will understand that step by step. Okay. So these are the packages that we have to create it. So now let's to begin and start with the packaging. Okay. So come to the IntelliJ idea. So this is having your base package, right? Inside that only you have to start with new package. So first I will create the package name is entity, right? Enter. Entity package created. Then I have to create a new package called do, right? It could be do, it could be repository. Sometimes people do call repository as well. So that could be any name, do. After that I have to create the service package, right? Then I have to create controller package, and then I can create mapping package. Then I will create utility package. Simply I created the packages, right? Controller, do, entity, mapping, service and utility, right? Now what I want to perform with this operation, right? So my first criteria is that which I am going to perform, right? I have to design one application which will take input from the user, which could be say like employee, user. Employee is the one user, right? Suppose. So I will take input from the user, right? Employee user, and saved it that into a database. So what is the requirement, right? Need to take employee user from client and perform DV operation. So what DV operation we have to perform? That is a for operation, right? What could be? That is called CRUD operation. So we are going to perform all the CRUD operation using Springboot. So what is the meaning of CRUD? So here C means create. Create means save, right? R means what? Read, right? U means what? U means update, right? D means what? Delete. So here we are going to perform this CRUD operation with create, read, update and delete, right? So what meaning of create means inserting record, read means fetching record, updating means if you want to update the record, delete means deleting the record. So this is all kind of operation that we have to perform if you want to go with the I want to perform this in this application, right? So here what is my requirement? I created one Spring Boot application, but I did not create anything. I just created the packages right now, right? But I have to follow some things. I have to, whenever we do design application, right, some aim should be in our mind what we are going to develop. So we are going to develop one application which could perform some operation over the employee objects. It should create employee, it should read employee, it should update employee, it should delete employee. So these kind of operation I am going to perform, so that only I have to start that. So first, what things will come in our mind? I created a number of packages. What things I should create first? I should go with the controller first, or I should go with the utility first, or service, or mapping, or entity. So always remember that we do go with the entity first, right? There is no hard and fast rule, but normally we do go with the entity only, right? So in entity, what I will do, I will go on a new and I will create a new class. Hope this agenda is clear, right? What we are going to cover it, right? If you did not, please rewatch it once again. So here we are going to perform one operation where employee does perform this kind of create, read, update and delete operation, right? So here I will go in entity and I will create a new class, Java class, which could be employee class. So employee class is created, right? Now I will take some attribute of employee class. So I will say here private, say integer only, say ID. First one is ID, second one is a private string name, right? Private string, say salary. Okay, let's take in a string only. Okay, and private string type of suppose address. I took this 4 field here. So what happened here? I took ID, name, salary and address, right? So what is ID? What could be the name? What could be the salary? What could be the address? That we will provide by the user itself. So here I am not going to create getter setter. So I added one Lombok dependency here in the pom.xml file, right? You can see it. That is a Lombok. Oh, yeah, this one only. So here it is provide some kind of annotation to us where we can use that annotation and directly can perform the we can skip the getter setters. So normally what happen, right? If you are already aware of the core Java, right? When you will create the entity class, we have to go with the getter setters, but we are not going to use it, right? Here I will use at Ola constructor, right? At Noah constructor, at getters, and at setter. Ola constructor, Noah constructor, getter and setter, these are the 4 annotation that is by default. So it will create Ola argument constructor, it will create Noah argument constructor, it will create getter and it will create setters automatically. We don't have to worry about it. Even we do not write it. If it is required, we can use a toString method as well, because toString is also required, right? We can add a toString also. So it will create the toString method. If it is required, hash code equals, like depending on the scenario, we can do it also, but not, it is not required always. So I use this annotation because these are the Lombok annotation, right? And some of the database annotation we have to use. One is called at entity annotation. So that will what happen, right? Here we are going to perform JPA operation, right? So in JPA, entity annotation will be the annotation which could be responsible to create the table itself into a table, a database. We do not manually create that, right? So entity will create, and we have one more annotation called a table. Table annotation is optional. We can keep it or we can ignore it as well, right? Entity is a mandatory. So what happen? When do we use table, right? So here I can provide some name. So suppose what happen, right? I am providing a name, right? Employee like my employee, something like that. Okay, my EMP. Then what happen right here in this case? In the database, the table will create by the name of my EMP. If I will not use that, then what happen, right? The table name will be the same name as a class name, like employee. So that way it does take care. So that's why this add table annotation is optional, right? Add table annotation optional will which is not mandatory. If you will keep it, it will take by the name. If it is not, then it will take the class name as well. Class name only, like that. Okay. So here we have this entity and table annotation. And one more thing that you have to understand, that if you are going to cover right this integer ID, so here we are going to one more annotation of the JPA called ID annotation, right? Which could be perform auto primary key. So here ID will be the auto primary key value here, right? And one is generated value. So here I will use that generated value as well. So what I'm doing here this entity and table and this ID and generated value, these are the JPA annotation, Java Persistence API annotation. What they do, ID does say, okay, ID will be the primary key, and generated value, what happen, right? Normally ID value we do not give by the client. So that means it will automatically generate by the database itself. I will tell you how does it generate automatically, right? So this time we have just complete that model part, right? So here what we did, first we created the class and then we created some attribute on it, and then I started with some annotation like all are constructor, no are constructor, getter, setters, two strings, entity and add table annotation, right? After that I uses this annotation ID and generated value. So ID is only for primary key. So that means what happened, right? This variable will be primary key in the table, which will create by the JPA itself. Rest 3 attribute will not be a primary key, right? After that, let's come directly to the DO. So in the DO, what do we do? I will create one interface. So that could be employee repository, something like that. Employee repository. That could be an interface, right? So here we have an employee repository interface that will extend the one interface called JPA repository. So JPA repository is one of the interface, right, which we have to use it. We have one more interface called CRUD repository, but JPA repository we are using it here, right? So whichever interface we created, that will extend the JPA repository. So JPA repository will having some predefined method that we are going to perform, that we are going to use, and that does responsible to perform some kind of CRUD operations. So what kind of method it has, that we will look after some time, right? So when do we create JPA repository, that does take two things. What kind of class we are going to use with that? So we are going to perform with the employee class operation here. Second, it will take the primary key of my, because here with this employee repository, right, that is responsible to perform the database operation. So in database operation, what database operation we are performing? We are performing employee object only, right, to insert, to fetch, to delete, whatever it is. So that's why we are providing here employee. And second, we are providing what is the primary key here. So primary key type is integer here, right? So we will take the type only. Always remember that. Not take that attribute name. We do take the type of the primary key. So I will take here integer only. So I will take integer and I will pass integer here, like that. So whenever you are going to extend the JPA repository, right, you have to provide this JPA repository will perform operation on which object. So it is performing on the employee object, right? Then what is the primary key type actually? So primary key type is integer. So that's why I took the integer here. That much only we have to keep under the repository section. That's it. We do not keep any other things on it, right? Public interface employee repository extend JPA repository, which is having employee and integer, right? Next we have to come to the service. So in the service, what do we do? Whenever we are performing some operation, right, with Spring Boot, that time you should know that Spring Boot is performing some kind of loose coupling. Spring Boot is responsible to perform loose coupling. What does it mean, loose coupling? Loose coupling means here we are talking runtime polymorphism. Runtime polymorphism. That is one of the advantage, right? So whenever we do create any things like in terms of service, right, what do we do first? we do write interface and interface implementation. Interface implementation. Always remember that, right? When you are working on a Spring framework, we do not write directly with the class itself. First we are going with the interface, and then interface will implement that, because we do runtime polymorphism, right? You know that is called overriding, right? So if you do not know about overriding, please rewatch it. That is performing kind of dynamic method dispatch. Dynamic method dispatch, which does say that if you have a parent, right? So let me write parent equal to, that will hold the child object. That does only, right? So we may have n number of child of the parent, right? So that means this object will be loaded here in the dynamically, right? So that is called loose coupling here. Loose coupling means overriding dynamic method dispatch. So because of that only, I'm not going to create the class directly here. First I'm going to create what? Interface. So in the service I will go and I will create a one interface first. What is the name of the interface? Employee service, right? That could be interface. And we know that interface will having an abstract method only, right? So I will write here abstract method. What could be the abstract method? So first I am going to perform, suppose, save operation. So I will write here public, right? Let's say it is returning the employee only, and I'm going to perform kind of save operation. So save, what does it take? It does take employee object. Or let me take the name here like create. Later on what I will do, I will perform, suppose, fetch operation. So what I will do, public, it will return me list of employees. Suppose I want to perform retrieve all the object, right? List of employee, and it could be get by ID like that, or get all. It could be get all. So it will not take anything as in parameter, right? Take suggestion, so that will be good. And we have to import the package for the list. Next what I will do, I will write public, right? That will take, will return me one object employee, and that could be find by ID or get by ID, right? And it will take one argument, that could be a primary key like ID. So that way I created a one interface which is having a 3 operation right now, at least. Create, that means save record, get all, and get by ID, right? So these 3 things I created now. Now after that what I will do, I will write the implementation of it, right? As I told you, right, whenever you are writing the service cannot be write directly with the class. Service always go with the interface only. So I first employee service, and then I will create a new class. That could be employee service IMPL. That means implementation of the employee service. This class will implement one interface called employee service. And here I will override, it will give option to me, implement all the methods. So I will override all these 3 methods. It's automatically override, right? So employee service IMPL will implement the employee service, right? And then it is having a 3 method, create method, get all method, and get by ID method, right? These 3 method is I define into a employee service, right? So let's go with the create first. So in the create, what I will do first, I have to perform some insert operation, right? So what I will do here, who will do the insert operation? That will do by the repository only. I mean DO only, employee repository. So what I will do here, I will use here one, I will get the reference of the employee object, employee repository, say repository, something like that, right? And what I will do here, I will perform the save operation, right? So we have to simply call one method, repository dot save method. What does it save? Employee object only. So here what is happening, this employee repository is calling a one save method. That is one of the important part, guys, please understand, because this is only perform the database operation, and it will return something that is going to the client also. So employee repository dot save. Save is a method of which actually in employee repository will see here, right? I did not write anything. It is a blank only. So how it is calling this save method? So this save method is not from the employee repository. This save method is from JPA repository. That is the inheritance rules actually. That child class can be called the parent class method, right? The simple inheritance rules, right? So here we are calling the save method. So save method is coming from the JPA repository only. That's why we have used here JPA repository. So this JPA repository save method internally will call the insert command and will save data to the database. That much easy this JPA framework does for us. Okay, we don't have to write the query manually, right? So this repository.save, what does it do? It will save the record into a database, right? After that, now we are not overriding other method as well because that will look later on. Right now you have to understand that here we have to only perform the save operation, right? That's it. So model part completed, repository part completed, service part completed. Yeah, one more thing I have to tell you here. In Spring, right, object instantiation happening automatically. So what happened, right? We have to use some annotation which is called stereotype annotation. So we have some annotation that is name is stereotype annotation. Stereotype annotation. How many it is? It is many. Like first we have a component. Second we have a controller. Okay, and third we have a service and repository. These are the annotation actually, stereotype annotation. So this task of this 4 annotation is responsible to create the instance. So whenever you want to create the instance, we have to use this 4 annotation, and we have to annotate that on a different label actually, where component are the parent of all these 4 annotation. Right? So how do we use at which place? So here we have written entity. I do not write any annotation because entity will directly use it. But service, DO, in the DO level we have to use at repository annotation. So I have to use it at repository annotation. If I will not use it, I will tell you it will give me error. It will not create instance of this one. At repository annotation, at the service, not at the interface level but at class level, we have to use at service annotation. Right? Before that we have to use one more annotation like in controller. So let me create one controller class here also. That could be employee controller. So in the employee controller, what I will do here, I will use one annotation called that REST controller. So REST controller is advanced form of controller which is also responsible for performing the instantiation, right? So REST controller is also is coming from the Spring Web, right? But you can see here, if I see here service, right, it is coming from the stereotype dot service. You can see here stereotype dot repository. So here I am not using controller because controller having a less features, REST not having a advanced feature of it, because it is responsible to perform the REST operation also, right? So here what I will do, I will create one method. So I will write one public. Okay, let's say it is written kind of object, say like employee here. Right, and let's say it could be having a let's take the suggestion. So that could be the employee. What does it do here? I'm going to perform create operation, right? So let's take a create only here, method name. Okay, create only. So I created a one method let me written here some null right now, otherwise it will give me error. So I created a one method public employee and create. That's the name of the method and it is returning the null value. Now what I will do here, this controller will be called by the client, right? This control will call by the client. So that time we have to perform some operation here, right? What operation? It should get some input from the user. So suppose this control class, right? control class will call by the client, right? Call by the client, right? So control class will call by the client, then we should know how the client will call. So client will call through the URL only. Client will call through URL. So what could be the URL? So here we will define some endpoints. That could be the URL for it. Like for example, that could be endpoint. I can write here like localhost because we are running in local, right? And that could be the port number. And then I will write here, suppose it is employee, right? And employee it is having like suppose a create operation or something like that, right? So that could be the URL. So we have to make this URL in our controller. So this could be the common for all the scenarios, like localhost with the port number, and employee will be the endpoint, right? Class name, endpoint, and that could be a create method. This to create. So I will write here one annotation called get mapping. So actually here also we have to define get mapping, post mapping. So get mapping is responsible for fetch the record, right? So if you want to fetch the record, we have to use get mapping. What I will pass here, I will pass here suppose create, right? So this create, then I want to make it something that could be common for all this operation, right? So employee, so this I will use in class label. So employees create, employees fetch, employee find, something like that, right? So I will go here and I will create at a request mapping, and what I will do here, I will pass here like employee. So this time my endpoint is ready. So that is also one of the important part. Request mapping we can use at method level or class level, but yeah, get mapping we will use only at the method level. So here I can use forward slash as well or directly also. So employee is having a one endpoint and create is also having a one endpoint, right? Now employee service, employee repository, employee controller, everything is ready, right? Now we have to do some kind of configuration, application or properties configuration, right? So for this configuration, guys, I think that video is too long. Okay, so we'll do it in next session. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you like the video, please subscribe it, and to continue that, right, please watch the other video also. We do provide some kind of configuration. Thanks for watching. Take care.